Let's get started. Hello, welcome back. Thank you for taking time to attend. On behalf of All India Orpheus Group, a very warm welcome to Sangam 21 virtual conference. A very warm welcome to Mike Hichwan. So we have Mike, you guys can see in the video. Mike is joining from Maryland and now the current time is 12 a.m. So we have to say good morning to him. Thank you so much for your support for the community, Mike. If you're seeing Mike first time, I'll just quickly introduce. Mike Hichwa is a Senior Vice President at Oracle, and he's responsible for the development of database tools and data access for Oracle database. He is the original architect and developer of Oracle Apex, and he develops Apex apps every day. Some of Mike's popular web apps include asktom.oracle.com, livesqloracle.com, and apex.oracle.com. Mike also leads driver development for JDBC, Python, .NET, and others. His team is also responsible for SQL Developer, SQLcl, Oracle REST data services, Oracle Database Cloud Console developments. So Mike and his organizations are focused on providing developers with the highest level of productivity and the performance. So I request you ask all your burning questions related to the development. I think Apex is very, very key for our community. So please ask all your questions in the Q&A. So with that, very, very warm welcome. Again, very good morning to Mike, and over to you, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Oh, here we go. Okay. Thanks for the warm introduction. And yes, I do look after the intersection of application development with the Oracle database and the various tools responsible to do that. And so these are the topics I'm going to cover today. And I'm first going to dive into it might be a bit not very transparent, but Apex is my favorite app dev tool. And just a little story of how I got into it. So I joined Oracle about 33 years ago and was very interested in Oracle Forms development. So I did a lot of Oracle Forms in the late 80s. And it was such a strong technology that there's still Forms being used today. And Oracle Forms is a low-code tool, or a tool that you would not have to program. And it was popular in our user base even before Windows. So it predated client server, but it was also popular during client server. And when the web hit in the mid 90s, I just became completely obsessed with the web, and I felt that it was the future and that there was nothing else, and just completely abandoned my efforts with Oracle Forms and switched over to build web systems for Oracle. And in the late 90s, I built something called WebDB. It was Oracle's first web application, and then it wasn't the world's best software, but I had a chance to redo it again, and that became Apex. So the value proposition of Oracle Apex is that it lets you build enterprise applications substantially faster with substantially less code than you would do it traditionally with JavaScript. And so just like in the olden days, it made no sense to code a ability to query data using in C. Again, this is before Java even existed. The same thing holds true today, and that JavaScript can be very, very tedious and very low level, and can hamper your productivity. And using a high productivity language or framework like Apex can allow you to build applications much faster. It can allow you to be a star in your company. You need to build an application or build some service. If you can build it faster with higher quality and greater user acceptance, it can be a win. Also, you don't have to only code Apex. You could mix an Apex application with a React application or any number of other applications to form an entire solution. So what Apex lets you do by reducing the amount of JavaScript or CSS or HTML or technical programming you need to do to build sophisticated apps, it allows you to focus more on the technology or the solution. You might be able to build an application 3 different ways. It becomes a a higher productivity. Also, I trust a number of people that are here at Sangam 21 have SQL skills. And what it allows you to do is leverage your SQL or REST service skills in your application development. So Oracle has a very robust capabilities with analytics, and it performs well for data warehouses, for very large databases, for databases in the finance and government and regulated industries that are the world's most sophisticated systems, point of truth systems, and you can build systems with that by leveraging your Oracle database knowledge and your SQL skills with Apex. Apex is a browser-based application development, so you just come to a browser and start. You can either enter SQL or build applications or see examples of applications that have already been built. Apex is no cost, so there are other low-code tools out there, but they're very expensive. And so with Oracle Apex, you can build an application which supports 1 million or 10 million or 100 million online users, and it is no cost beyond the cost of the Oracle database. So you can get an Oracle database free, but if you want support, you need, the company you work for needs to pay for it, and Oracle Apex is a no-cost feature of the Oracle database. So what exactly can you do with Oracle Apex? Well, in about 2 minutes, you can write a quick SQL statement or provide a table or a view or a RESTful endpoint and get what we call an interactive report. And on this interactive report, you can do many things. So I remember it's like 15 years ago, I asked the person that ran our Oracle applications group, what was the biggest problem that they had in building applications? And they said that every user wants to see different data. If you design a report, it's fine maybe when it releases, but then the next day someone wants to see something different. And in this example here, I've got like 7 or 8 columns, but real world data might have 30 or 40 or 50 columns, and there's no screen wide enough to fit all that. So with an interactive report, you can choose which columns you want to see, you can sort them, you can pivot, you can filter. It becomes like a mini Tableau. You can chart, you can do all these things, but it's just inside of your application, and you can create it very rapidly. You don't have to build all those capabilities into the tool. It's just available to you. And for example, a lot of customers like it when they create these reports. They can highlight or have computed columns, then they can save those reports, share them with others. Or they might choose to say, oh, I love this report. Why don't you send it to me in email with an attached CSV file every week? And you can get a report every week and you don't have to log into the system. So my favorite new feature of Oracle Apex is this thing called faceted search. So the internet has taught us, and e-commerce has taught us, that the way you search is typically through facets. You see representative values along the left side. Typically, you can place it anywhere you'd like, and then you just filter them to find the pieces of information that you like. And so in this case, I've filtered for Red Bull as the winning team for Formula One races, Formula One data set, and I see that Red Bull has won 75 races. If I filter further for Max Verstappen, I can see that he has won 20 of those races, which trails Sebastian Vettel with 38 and is more than Mark Webber with 9. I can also see that at a glance that Max has won 12 races in this decade, and in the 2010s he's won 8 races. And so there's a lot of information that can be gleaned about F1 data, but virtually any data set. And so all the complexity about building out the facets, about having the different filters display, doing the row counts, doing all the JavaScript to make the different panels synchronized. It's all just transparent. You just configure your facets and everything goes. In fact, Oracle Apex will recommend your facets. So it'll say, based on this query, this table, we recommend these facets, or you can just define which facets you'd like. So another feature of Apex is, of course, charting. And you can do a lot more sophisticated charts than this. This is just a very simple one. And again, I created all these things myself. So what this is showing is the most recent race where Max Verstappen won the 2021 title, and you can see that he was, by the green bar, that he was in second place for most of the race, except for when he pitted with a little yellow diamond, and then right at the last end, at the last lap, he passed Lewis Hamilton and won the race in a controversial finish. But here you can see it graphically, his performance, and the SQL that underpins this is pretty straightforward. I'm just selecting from a single table. I have an inline select to get the pit stop from another table, and it uses bind variables to efficiently filter the queries. And so, as you see here, the race is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and the driver is Max Verstappen. So those bind variables just get substituted in, and the same query, and the query runs with its maximum efficiency. So here's another application. It's called Aria People. This application is used over 1 million times a day, and it's been the most popular application within Oracle. It's an internal application, and no application is used more within Oracle. In fact, Oracle Apex is the dominant application development platform, and more people have more web page views in Apex than all other technologies combined. And so this particular employee directory, one of the things I wanted to show off is that this uses an Oracle text query, and Oracle text is quite powerful. So as you can see, I've completely misspelled my name, but with 140,000 Oracle employees, it still found me, even with that poor spelling of my name. Oracle text, of course, is included with the Oracle database, and we've benchmarked it versus Elasticsearch for both fuzzy search quality and performance, and it won on both accounts. Oracle Apex, one of the things that people like about it is that you can, of course, do forms, and all of the complexities about managing insert, update, deletes are all handled magically for you. And of course, you can do it with SQL or you can do it with REST. And we have a number of advanced controls. I just show a couple here. One's a markdown editor, and the other is like a pull down list of values. And you could build this dialogue in 2 minutes or thereabouts. There's nothing complicated about it. But that again shows the power of Apex and low code. Here's an example of maps. And so the Oracle database ships with a very detailed maps from around the world. It's called the HERE dataset, and it's used by most navigation systems throughout the world. So in your car, when you have a navigation system, the dataset that they typically use is the HERE dataset. And Oracle licenses this for you and provides you all the maps. And so you don't have to install any software. You don't have to license any additional technology. It's all just there. And so in this case, I have mapped the various F1 circuits. And when I click on India, I can see that there was 3 races there in Bood, and Sebastian Vettel won all 3, and they were between 2011 and 2013. So another really interesting feature of Apex, something I think is quite unique and something that we've spent a lot of time on, is that we've completely separated our components, like the ability to have a button or navigation or charts and reports and forms, from the look and feel or the style of the application. And so you can click this customize link in the developer toolbar in the bottom right if you're an Apex developer, and pop up something we call theme roller, and you can have complete control over the user interface. There's a lot more detail than is shown here. There's a lot of drill down, but in this case, we're building this Gloria Foods application, within a very short period of time, we were able to adopt their complete color scheme, their look and feel. We were able to load up their fonts, so we have exactly the same fonts, we can given pretty much any website in the world, you can pretty much clone it very, very rapidly using our universal theme. So it allows you to evolve your user interface without having to rewrite your application. And being around in the industry and having all the gray hairs to prove it, don't get fooled by the hair on top. That's also gray. I color it. But the one thing I know is that change is a constant, and every 3, 4, 5 years, if you don't change your application, it just looks old. And so you have to keep evolving and keep modernizing and keep making the application even more refined. And with Apex, you can just upgrade to a new theme or have a new theme to your application, and you can modernize that look to make it fresh, keep it fresh. Oops, I'm sorry. So I don't want to give the impression that you can build anything in Apex in 2 minutes. It's not actually true. Some things are more complicated, and so we're working on an application internally to Oracle where we're building a payment system. You click on a QR code at your favorite restaurant, and it gives you your bill. You can choose to split the check with somebody else, and then you could provide a tip. And then you could share your experience with the restaurant on social media. And of course, we would integrate with payment services. And so there's quite a bit of integration going on here, a bunch of REST going on, but there's also local Apex work where we're calculating recommended tips. We're doing the split the check. Do you want to split it equally? Do you want to split it unequally? And so that type of work is also very possible and very common in the Apex world, is to perform integrations with other systems. So overall, we think that Oracle Apex is the world's most popular low-code system, at least in terms of the number of apps that are used on a daily basis. And so Oracle Apex is used in India and 139 other countries. India is the 4th most common country, and it is one of my missions. I was just telling Sai that I'd love to have India move up on that list and pass other countries and become more popular. About 3,000 new Apex applications are created every day that we know of. Other systems create Apex applications that block any network communications, and so we don't know how many there are, but there are a substantial number. We know for a fact that there's over 500,000 developers that have used Apex, not that they use it every day, but that there's been a large community, and it's growing. And the community is diverse. It's made up of both professional developers, I'd probably say it's the majority, but a lot of them are work group developers or professional developers that work in a line of business. And there's also citizen developers, people with no formal IT background can still upload a spreadsheet and create an application from a spreadsheet, do some basic things, and then hand it off to a professional developer if the application gets more sophisticated. And the Apex has a big team. It's about 75 people, and it's growing a couple of people every month, maybe 3 or 4. And we have an India team that's growing as well, and we're very proud of their contributions. Shaitanya is our product manager, and if you have questions, you can contact myself or Shaitanya, and we're happy to help any customers with Apex in India and everywhere else. Apex, like I said, is available for free, and you can get it. It's kind of well, I think it is unique in the industry. We have always free cloud services. It's not free for a month, not free for a year, it's free forever. So the only caveat is that if you don't use it for 2 weeks, we shut it down, and if you don't use it for a few months, then we cancel it. But if you do use it, you can have a free Oracle Apex forever. It's limited to about 20 gig of storage, but that's and 1 CPU, but that's pretty much it. We have an Apex service that is a lower cost than our autonomous services. Apex is available on all of our database services in the cloud and all Oracle databases on premise, including our free Oracle XE database. The cloud offers a number of capabilities, like you can instantly clone, you can publish on the internet maybe more easily. You have rich performance monitoring tools. You can easily backup, restore, and the management is all done for you. One feature I really like a lot is auto scale. So we have a lot of customers, and so some customers, maybe they buy one CPU, maybe they buy 10 CPUs, but they can auto scale up and down. So maybe during the night it's used less, and during the day it's used more, or maybe at different times of different days on the weekends it's used less, and so it scales down, and you only pay for the services that you're using at the time. And of course, if you maybe have a development service, you can stop it and basically just kind of stop the clock on the CPU charges. So even though I'm obsessed with Apex and have been so for 22 years, there is a much broader community for application development than just Apex. And our goal at Oracle is to enable, regardless of the application that you like, the application tool that you like, or the framework or the language, we want to make Oracle database the best database for that language. We want to give you the highest level of all the critical capabilities that you need. And so we invest greatly in .NET and our relationship with Microsoft. And Python is just going crazy in terms of its popularity and its growth. And very shortly, we're going to have a thin driver for Python. Everything I'm going to present on database tools, there is no charge whatsoever. We don't sell them. They are just given away to allow you to more easily get the value out of the Oracle database. So let's see what's sort of unique or different about Oracle database and our support for programming languages. I think there's really three areas that Oracle database excels, and then hence the framework's support. It's higher availability, so it's less downtime, higher performance in that you can build systems that are used by more people with higher concurrency and more data, and security. So those are the three areas that sort of differentiate enterprise systems from systems that are less critical. And in each of these areas, there's a lot of driver functionality that allows you to achieve these. So for example, when you're upgrading, you need to have different connection pools. You need to drain one pool and then allow it to all new connections to go to another pool. We have a transparent application continuity. So if an outage is detected, the applications can be rerouted and replay parts of a transaction. So even if a transaction fails in the middle of doing two statements out of say four, it can be it can be failed over to another node and perform and continue the transaction, making it seamless. And that's why you'll see airlines and banks and airports, customs officials, they use Oracle for these high availability scenarios. The other is the scalability. So Oracle database has a technology called RAC, and we also have sharding and other capabilities that allow us to have higher scale out capabilities. And of course, we have the Xdata platform. So when you're a developer for Oracle database, you can build on systems that are leverage the highest levels of capability with the Xdata platform. With security, we have security built in to every layer of the stack. So the network, the database itself, and the communications between the client and the server. And so, and that security is constantly enhanced. And whenever vulnerabilities are found, we're proactive and we provide patches to make sure that everyone is as secure as they possibly can be. So specific to each I think the four most popular languages are Java, .NET, Python, and Node, and each for their own reasons. JavaScript, of course, is Node, and so we try to make each one of those as optimized as we can, and allow you to download them with free use terms and conditions, so that you can integrate it with your CI/CD pipelines. We have interesting features like we have Graal VM, which can help you give you a whole new angle on running Java applications. We have new JDBC features for virtual threads and async for reactive programming and stream support. So there's a lot of new capabilities coming in our drivers, and which we frequently rev 4 times each per year. With .NET has really gone through an evolution to something called .NET Core, which is a multi-platform .NET, which isn't just Windows, it's Linux, etc. And so pretty much that's the center of the universe. And Oracle is fully supportive of .NET Core and the Entity Framework and .NET 6.0. And so just like all frameworks, .NET is evolving, and it's very strong, and it's used by a very large number of Oracle's largest customers. And so we're very attentive to that community. Like I said, Python is going crazy. It's going crazy for as a tool to automate, as well as a tool for data science and analytics. And so we have a number of full support for Python. And the most interesting thing there is that in a short period of time, hopefully around a month, we will have a thin driver for Python, which will further simplify a Python deployment. So my team develops a number of, again, all free, no cost, plugins for various editors. And so VS Code is taking off. It's just a really wonderful platform. It's very easily extensible. The Electron framework that VS Code is written in is very strong. The Monaco editor is very customizable, and Oracle is extending VS Code to support Oracle database capabilities. For example, being able to run SQL statements or get what we call code insight, so you can start typing the name of a table and it can auto-complete the name. Of course, the syntax highlighting, the ability to provision cloud services from within the IDE, so you can live almost entirely within VS Code and interface with the cloud, interface with Oracle databases, develop, debug, and tune SQL, all from VS Code. Likewise, if you're a .NET developer, you want to live typically in Visual Studio, and we do the same thing there. The same technology is ported over for all the SQL capabilities, being able to describe tables and run SQL statements, author SQL, code folding, autocomplete, all those capabilities in VS Code as well for your .NET developers. And for Java developers, the IDEs are split between IntelliJ and Eclipse, and we again support the Oracle Cloud APIs, as well as if you're working on premise, you can have all the SQL widgets that you need to build out your system. So what's nice about this is you don't need a special purpose tool to do SQL development or Oracle development. You can do it from the IDE that you like and use most. So I think one of the least known tools that Oracle has that has the most promise and the most capabilities is something called Oracle REST Data Services, also known as ORDS. And again, there's no charge. If you want support, it's with the Oracle database. And ORDS, it runs in the middle tier. It runs standalone or in a Java Tomcat or WebLogic. And what it allows you to do is kind of like low-code API development. you can type a SQL statement or PL/SQL, and you can define an endpoint that maps to that. And so what ORDS will do for you is it will run your SQL statement, provide automatic pagination and filtering. It will manage a high performance connection pool. It supports OAuth, and you can have one Oracle REST data services deployment, and that can support any number of databases. It can support thousands of databases. We have one cluster of ORDS for each one of our data centers, and it supports tens of thousands of databases in each data center. So it's very high performance from that way. And so Oracle internally, across our Oracle applications, across our Fusion applications, and NetSuite and other groups, we have a standards committee on how we work with REST. And so Oracle, there is no RESTful standard for pagination and filtering. There's sort of best practices and such, but what Oracle does is we define a particular type of JSON result and how it can be interacted with, and ORDS conforms to that, so it can be used to extend other things. And so what we find is that ORDS has become very popular with customers building native mobile. So like in Objective-C or in Android, in Java, they are building the native ones and communicating through REST microservice style APIs with an Oracle database, and they use ORDS to manage the database interaction, or to put the database interactions behind an HTTP request. So the client, maybe the cell phone, makes a request over HTTP, that goes to ORDS. ORDS looks at that request, and then it performs the authentication, runs a DBC connection pool, runs the query with the filter or without, or the pagination, et cetera, and then returns the result back in JSON. And the result that comes back in JSON is not just the data that comes back, but it's also the data structure. So you know that the type of the column and the column names, and that allows your client to be more intelligent about what it is you're looking at, that the fact that it's a date or a number, et cetera. Like all of our tools, we have, and this is kind of new, I think it's been about a year, that we have, it's called FUTC, Free Use Terms and Conditions. And so that means there's no click-through. So in the past, if you wanted Oracle software, some pieces of Oracle software, you'd have to go to an Oracle website like OTN in the past, or oracle.com now, and download the technology, and you'd have to click through a license. Now you can get this free use terms and conditions license, so you can download it in an automated way from a command prompt, using a curl CURL command, or whatever you like, and it will download, and you don't have to do it the click through. And this allows you to fully automate your the installation of software without having to pre-stage or download it. So for SQL development, Oracle offers it's one tool, but sort of three incarnations. So we provide SQL Developer. It's used by over 5 million developers. It's the industry's most commonly used development tool. And in fact, many people use SQL Developer for Microsoft databases as a SQL Server, because it runs on a Mac, and historically a lot of the Microsoft tools didn't run on the Mac. But that aside, a SQL Developer is tremendously popular and capable. And we have a desktop version, which is a Java client, so it runs on Mac and Windows and Linux, and various flavors of Linux as well. We have a web version of it, and then we have a command line version. And I'll kind of go into those. So there's many capabilities of SQL Developer. You can write SQL statements. You can browse your database objects. You can debug your PL/SQL. You can do REST data services or ORDS development. It has a full-on data modeling tool. The industry's most sophisticated data modeling tool is SQL Developer. And again, it's no cost at all, and it can develop data models for and the SQL that underpin them for Oracle databases and other databases, DB2, SQL Server, et cetera. So it's multi-database from that perspective. The screenshot I'm showing is actually pretty cool. So just earlier today, we were running a benchmark tool to give a database a lot of load, and then we're monitoring that load. And you can see various aspects of the Oracle database, like the SQLs executed per second, the number of database sessions that are current. So in addition to doing this core SQL development, it also does this capability of monitoring. And so, for example, if I was looking at the sessions, I can see that I am have about 145 to 150 active sessions of the database at any point in time. And I can see that from the chart in the upper left. If I look at the execution rate of this benchmark that we ran a few minutes ago, a couple hours ago, I can see that I'm running around 14,000 SQL statements per second, which is a reasonable load for the system. And I can monitor that, and I can monitor virtually every other attribute with it as it goes through. That's sort of on the back office, what a DBA might like to see. But a lot of end users can also use SQL Developer. In this case, this is SQL Developer Web. It works in the desktop version as well. And what it lets you do is it lets you publish charts. And you can move these charts around, and you can have many more charts than I'm showing you here. It can have a funnel charts and pyramid charts and others. But the cool thing here is that you can create these widgets and then share them with others. And so if you just want to you don't want to have the hassle of building an entire like Apex application, this allows you to gain insights on for example, revenue or orders or some other metric that you might find you'd like to type. So you enter SQL, and the results can be rendered in these charts. So it's a very nice dashboarding tool. So maybe I'm just old school, but I like command line tools, and so I like typing on my keyboard sometimes more than I like to have an IDE. And I also like to be able to script it so I can run it in the background, or I can run it as a batch job. And so SQLcl provides all the capabilities built in the same technology stack as SQL Developer, but it's just a SQL prompt. And it's 100% compliant with SQL Plus. We run every SQL Plus regression test, and it passes all the regression tests. However, we've extended SQLcl, that stands for SQL Command Line, to support many other capabilities. So you can say info and give it a table name, and it gives you a whole bunch of additional information. You can do data pump, data loading, and data pump. You can do support for store your passwords in a vault, a HashiCorp vault, or others. You can make it part of a script and use it as part of your CI/CD pipeline. You can support Liquibase. So Liquibase is open source technology, but there's also for cost options as well. It's not from Oracle, but it allows you to do change management on your database. And so you can, and it's built into SQLcl. So Oracle builds its own driver so that all the database objects, types, user-defined data types, packages, procedures, triggers, tables, views, you name it, all the features are supported with Liquibase. And so that can allow you to take two databases, and it will generate the compensating changes to get the DDL the same. It can add columns, remove columns, add tables, etc. So you can, if you're wanting to compare two different Oracle environments, maybe your dev, test, prod, and stage, you can do that efficiently. It also has, even though it's command line, it has, as you start typing, you can do the tab to autocomplete tables. It can show you various options. You can page up and down for your history. But far and away, we just did this test about 2 hours ago. We wanted to see how long it would take to go from, on a Mac, but it would work on Windows as well, from absolutely no Oracle software and no SQL tool to installing SQLcl and connecting to a database, running a SQL statement and disconnecting. And we were able to run the following command, the curl command, and pipe it and extract the jar file and then run it and connect to my to an Oracle database and run a select statement in 7.05 seconds. Your mileage may vary, but it's pretty cool. So it shows how we've been able to develop this very powerful SQL command line prompt that you can use for scripting. It even supports JavaScript to provide conditional logic. And so that capability all comes down and you can install it with no Oracle Home in 7 seconds. I think that's pretty cool. Free use, terms and conditions, no charge. So one of the things that I find remarkably compelling about the Oracle database is that I work with customers and they're running Exadatas, or they might have 20, 30, 40 Exadata machines. They run super sophisticated applications. But I can run the same program, the same features, the same capabilities that runs these largest systems in the world, the most sophisticated systems. I can run that on my notebook. I can run it on my Mac with a Linux VM. I can run it natively on Windows, and I can run it in Linux natively as well. And it's free, 100% free to download and use myself, free to distribute, free to run for any number of users. There is no restrictions I really know of, other than the implied constraints that it's 2 gigabytes of RAM, 2 cores, and 12 gigabytes of data. So it has a native Install Shield Windows installer. We have the new version of our database 21C, out with Oracle XE, and it supports multi-tenant, it supports partitioning, supports advanced analytics. So all these capabilities that you might use for these super high-end applications, they're also available. Virtually every developer feature that I'm aware of, I listed a number here, are available in Oracle XE. One of the interesting things, what I find most interesting from an Apex perspective, but also interesting from a database perspective, is that sometimes a lot of customers like to put business logic close to their data because it's more efficient. And you can do that with using Oracle's PL/SQL procedural extensions to the SQL language. Remarkably powerful, remarkably capable, but not nearly as popular as the JavaScript language, which is the world's most popular language. So we have this GRAL technology that runs in the database, and we have this thing called MLE, which stands for Multilingual Engine, which lets us run JavaScript in the database. And so it's pretty good with database 21C. When database 23C comes out next year or early 2023, I know it's a long time in the future, but we'll have even more robust support for JavaScript. And we're really excited about that because we think that it will run remarkably fast. It will provide just-in-time compilation and a lot of those things, and you'll be able to leverage the open source that's out there in the JavaScript world inside of your Oracle database. So that concludes my presentation, but just in a brief summary, that wanted to point out that Oracle provides the tools that you need to build the world's most sophisticated, capable, secure, highly available point of truth systems. And all of these tools are available for free. We try to make them as easy to use. We rev them multiple times per year, and we try to make them enterprise grade. And so you can build out these systems using virtually any language that you like, all the popular IDEs. And of course, we focus on because we're a database company, we're more than a database company. We provide database and apps and a pretty robust cloud. I'm coming to you over Zoom, which is majority hosted in the Oracle Cloud. They're one of our best customers. And there you go. That's the database tools story. Thanks for listening.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike, for spending your valuable time with us. There are a few questions, maybe instead of
See if I
just
can
of time,
see them.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first question is about Apex deployment, and that there's many steps, and if we see improvement in this area. So there's been a few improvements in this area, and you're going to see many more. So one of the recent improvements is that we support a zipped files. So we take your, as opposed to having everything downloaded as a single file, it's downloaded as a zip corresponding to each Apex component, each page, each shared component. And then that could be easily checked into your source code control, GitHub, or whatever you use. And that can provide more granularity about how you do deployments. We also have a remote deploy from the tool itself, but we think that we can do better in that we want to automate that, and specifically on our cloud, we want to make it super easy. And one of the things that we have introduced in the current production version, Apex 21.2, is that we allow you to have a data packager as well, because if you want to take your application from a dev instance and deploy it to a stage instance, you might need to not only have your table structures, but also data within them. And so we allow a way to package and distribute it that way as well. I'm not sure that was a complete answer, but that's what I got tonight. So the next question, just to read it, sorry. So the question is that sometimes the SQL in an Apex applications is among the top CPU consumers, and we see this as well. And so the SQL, the Apex doesn't add anything to the SQL. The SQL will run the same in different environments. But if your SQL needs tuning, then then you need to tune it independently. And so one of the like that tool I was showing you with the SQL Developer, as well as AWR reports, are invaluable in highlighting SQL statements. So we frequently have a lot of cloud customers that use Apex at very high scales for tens of thousands of concurrent users, and they say that Apex is very slow and the SQL is running slow. And then when we drill down into it, more times than not, the problem is related to missing indexes. Maybe the table structures could be better. 26-way join is not always performant, or there's other ways to do something, maybe a materialized view or other ways to make certain things run faster. And so the trick is always to be able to trace and figure out where the time is going. And we're spending quite a bit of time building new tools. In fact, earlier today, we were in the middle of taking a tool that the Oracle real world performance team, the team that does all the Oracle benchmarks, and we want to make that and put it on Oracle's GitHub repository and free for everybody. And it's an Apex tool that accesses our performance tables and provides a detailed analysis of where exactly the time is going in the SQL statements, and that will help you because we expose the module. You can see exactly which Apex application and page that queries on, and determine if it can be tuned. So frequently the slow SQL is the SQL, not Apex on top of that. Does Apex use AI? So Oracle has machine learning algorithms built into it. It's had them for a long time, and we continue to enhance them. And the machine learning, it has a number of interesting use cases. It can, for example, predict how long a workflow might take, or it might predict the chances of fraud for an insurance claim. And all those popular algorithms are built into Oracle and can be accessed through SQL. In terms of AI, a lot of what AI programs you might run, you might dump the results into an Oracle database, then you can use SQL to join those findings with with your queries. So if you put the result of the AI algorithm into the Oracle database, and you can join that with your data and put that in an Apex user interface to show you what leverage that technology. So it's a bit of a integration effort there. Is SQLcl more rich in terms of commands of operation and execution than SQL+? Yes, it's quite a bit more. I gave a couple examples, but if you follow Chris Rice, K-R-I-S, Rice on Twitter, or Jeff Smith, Jeff Smith, you'll see sort of a constant barrage of examples of what you can do in SQLcl. SQLcl has a lot data pump, as well as a lot of table operations that are just a lot more advanced than SQL+. But one of the interesting things about SQLcl versus SQL+ is that you don't need an Oracle home. So if you don't want to have the hassle of configuring an Oracle home and downloading that, like I said, you could get SQLcl in about 7 seconds, fully operational from absolutely nothing. Is there a way I can trigger a shell script or Python script from Apex? So Apex in general can call out to util HTTP underneath the covers. So you can basically make any RESTful web call. And if you have a RESTful web service that might be a Python program or anything, you can call it that way. There is a hope that in the future, the multilingual engine will be extended to support Python in the database itself. And so maybe in some number of years, the Oracle database will have Python native. But for now, you would typically, from Apex, make a call to REST, and the REST endpoint would invoke a Python program. Did I miss any of the questions? Is it possible to connect to Teradata database? So if the Teradata database has a microservices or a REST API, then you can leverage it that way. Oracle is investing in a SQL dialect support in Apex, and so the rich capabilities that Oracle Apex has are that we take the data source, maybe a SQL query, and we wrapper it and filter it and pivot. All those types of capabilities we wrote in Oracle SQL, but MySQL and Postgres and Teradata and other companies' SQL have different dialects, and the way you do pivots, the way you can do grouping sets for faceted search, the way you do analytics, they're all very different. And so what we're doing with our 22.1 release, which is scheduled to come out in the first half of 2022 next year, is that we are providing this pluggable way where you can support other SQL dialects. Our first target is MySQL HeatWave. So MySQL HeatWave is from Oracle. It's a very cost-effective a way to do advanced analytics and data warehousing. And so we want to allow Apex applications to build out the user interface for those. But the MySQL dialect is very different than the Oracle dialect, and we want to be able to support them. And so we're working on that. And the second part of the question is, shall Oracle Unified Directory be integrated with Apex for user authentications? So in terms of authentication to an Apex application, we support OAuth 2 and others, but basically the most commonly used is what's called header variable auth, where something upstream from Oracle Apex will inject something into the HTTP header that can't be hacked, and then the Oracle Apex application can leverage that to know who you're logged in as. But you can use Facebook auth, Gmail auth. There's a whole host of partners that provide different authentications, but you can do SSO SAML. There are specific database versions you might need to do that, or you might have to run a Java program. But you can come to the discussion forums, which will soon be upgraded to be running Oracle Apex for the entire database division, including Apex. right now they're vanilla forms, but they will become Apex based, and ask these questions as well. Or you can email me and I can get you an answer and best practices and blogs from Christian Normaler and others on how to do SAML based auth with Oracle. So SQLcl is a Java program. This is a jar file, and in my example of getting it to run in 7 seconds, assumed that you had Java on your machine. So I kind of cheated there. If you didn't have Java, then it wouldn't work. But basically, you download the war file, which is the Java program, and you extract it, and then you can execute it straight away, assuming you have a Java runtime environment, and it just starts up. I think that was that question. Do we have a use case study for how to enable? We should have a use case for SSO for SAML. What is the recommended way to resolve issues where projects require multiple developers to touch the same web page? So the merge question. So when you have multiple developers working at the same time in the same application, which is very common with Apex, it's different than people working on, say, like a Java program. And so with Oracle Apex, you can do it in different ways. Each developer can have their own copy of the application, and they can make their changes, and you can merge the changes, which can be a bit painful. Or the multiple developers can actually work in the same Apex repository and work concurrently. It's a complicated question. Sometimes the answer is less obvious. So in the coding world, everything's a file, but in Oracle Apex, which is declarative and there's a bunch of properties, it's kind of like an Oracle database. And so you can alter a table and add a column. You can alter an Apex app and add a page or change properties. And so the source, the merging and is different. We in our next release, we are planning to change our export file format from a SQL script to insert the metadata to a JSON format. And so the JSON format will be more compatible with open source tools, and hopefully will make your CI/CD and multi-developer and merging more easily in the future. And so that is coming down the road. Is it possible to create a multi-tenant Apex app? Yes, it is. Apex itself is a multi-tenant app. We have this workspace concept, and so you can use VPD or RAS, virtual private database, or real application security. You don't have to, but it can be an interesting way to be able to allow you to deploy one Apex application, but service multi-tenants, and which in this case become multi-tenant. So for example, I could have a survey application, and it could be used by both Coke and Pepsi, or two different companies, could run the same application, but be completely isolated from each other. And so Oracle has hooks for VPD to be able to set your context so that you can only see the rows that correspond to your application. And there's other ways to do it too. It could be schema, have the same application, but change the parsing schema. There's some clever ways to do that, but a number of companies, including Oracle, provide multi-tenant capabilities with Apex application. And any plans of using AI in code writing? Absolutely a hot topic, and I've seen, but like with Oracle Apex, we try to avoid code writing. So maybe we'll be using AI to recommend attributes or properties, but Apex in general is not code. But I think that Apex does frequently use a SQL, and so I think we could use AI to guess what you're going to type next, or to do that sort of AI coding. It can be remarkably productive, and and not require you to read as many manuals or Google as many syntax examples, and it can be a much more productive experience. So we're definitely looking into that.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike. I think you covered pretty much all the developer tools, especially the free databases, XE and the free tier autonomous database. I think one important things is like these all tools comes with a no cost. So make sure that we use it. Also share with our community, especially the Indian developer community. And again, it is 1 a.m. for Mike. Thank you for your passion to support the community. We love to see you, the whole developer community, stay using Apex and other tools. And especially we will work towards Indian developer community to use all these tools. And as we discussed, we want to see you in Sangam 22, right? So thanks,
I
thanks so
look
much.
forward to it. Okay, thanks
Yeah, so
again. So,
yeah, one
take care.
more minute. Just want to run a quiz on your talk. Let's see who is the winner for this. If you can
Sure,
stay for one more minute.
of course.
Yeah, guys, this is, I was just putting in a chat, like go to menti.com, 5011 8240. I'll just wait for 5 seconds. You need to join. I can see people are joining already, like 22, 23, 3 more seconds. Go to menti.com, 5011 8240. We want to see a new winners because there are winners are coming and coming same time, like Suraj and Venkat. They won twice, right? So we want to see the new faces. So please join. And it's pretty easy one. And if you actually focused on Mike's session, I think pretty much you can answer all the questions. And also one important thing is when you answer, right answer as well as the fastest answer. So basically this tool measures your response in milliseconds. Okay, let's get started. We don't want to waste Mike's time. Okay, answer fast to get more points. I'm not going to read the question, so you read it. We
Ah.
asked, how do you pronounce, right? So it's not, we are not asked for the acronym.
Yes,
Okay.
we've officially changed our name. We're no longer Application Express. We're Apex. We've changed it in our doc, and we're changing it in other places too. And hopefully I didn't use the word Application Express when I spoke.
Yeah. Okay. Important thing. Please note down. Okay. Let's see who actually answered 15 people. Who's actually the fastest response in this song? Looks like Sagar is the fastest for the first question. So let's see. Let's keep that speed, Sagar. Let's go to the next question. Oh my God. So it's a team roller, sorry. But yeah, let's see who are the
Theme Designer might have been a better name, but we called it Theme Roller.
So let's see. I think looks like Himanshu is coming. Let's see. Yeah, Himanshu is the fastest. Thanks, Himanshu. Keep that speed on. And let's go to the third question. Wow. That means 13 people really, really focused on Mike's session. So yeah, thanks for that. So let's see who are the 13 people. Wow. New Sagar is coming. Keep that speed going. So it's like.
Well, I appreciate everyone that voted for 30,000. Thank you very much for that, but we're not quite that big.
That's good. Yeah, we like to see maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah. Okay, Venkat is coming. You want to grab one more giveaway? Okay, let's see. And this is going to decide your future, right? 5 of 5. Super. And we also want to see that last answer sometime, 100 times. Yeah. Okay,
Yes,
let's
yes.
see who's the
When I get
winner.
the artificial intelligence, we'll have that.
Yeah, we love to see that. Yeah. Super. Mike Venkat is so active. He's a third-time winner in this keynote. Means
Congrats to
the whole
Venkat.
period. Yeah. So congratulations, Venkat. Thanks for participating. Okay, this is a sentence of the day. Maybe I think, Mike, next time we will build the application using Apex. This is like a small game. We are showing a number of clues during the session, and they need to form a sentence basing on these words. And these words are taken from the Oracle documentation, right? So currently we are showing in a PPT. Maybe next time we will automate this process. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, Mike. I don't know, I need to say good night or good morning for you, but hopefully you'll have a couple of hours sleep, and bye for now. Thanks for
Okay.
recording
Bye-bye.
that.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.